Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. Today, as I'm recording this, is Tuesday, December 31st, so Happy New Year to everybody out there listening. Happy holidays as well, if you haven't caught the last couple of episodes where we've graciously wished everybody a happy holidays here from Always Bayern Chelsea. But I wanted to hop on here today because it's been a little while since we last put an episode out, and Chelsea has had a couple matches, two poor losses, a loss to Fulham, 2-1, and then a loss to Ipswich Town, 2-0. So Jim's going to talk about those matches in a little bit more detail. I'll provide a few thoughts about them, and then I'm also going to talk about Bayern Munich and their contract situations that they need to figure out here during this winter pause, or at least hopefully get done as the season kind of ramps back up, because you never want those to go to the last minute. So hope you all are enjoying the new fancy intro music that we got going. I know that I am for sure. And I also wanted to point everybody to the YouTube channel, because I did just release my State of the Season address for Bayern Munich in the winter pause. The Hinrunde is wrapping up, so I wanted to kind of give my thoughts on everything from how the season's going so far, how Bayern stands in all competitions. I rated the whole squad on a scale of 1 to 10, and I also made some predictions as to where the rest of the season in the Rückrunde will end up for Bayern Munich, as well as kind of the Bundesliga as a whole. So yeah, I put a lot of effort into those State of the Season addresses, the longer form video essays. So it would mean a lot if you checked it out and maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So without further ado, let's get into it here. I'm going to see if I can get an audio recording from Jim talking about these Chelsea matches. But yeah, the first one was the Fulham match on Boxing Day, I believe it is, the day after Christmas here, December 26th, where Chelsea lost 1-2 to Fulham, and it actually started off looking good for Chelsea. In the 16th minute, Cole Palmer got a goal assisted by Colwill, and it was a great individual goal from Palmer, who has had a little bit of a quiet stretch lately, at least by his standards, which is still solid play. But I think that even though teams are kind of looking at him a little bit closer than maybe they were last year in terms of defending, he still finds a way to break through and score that cool, important goal. So good for Palmer. But then Chelsea kind of went to sleep after that. There wasn't a whole lot of action until the collapse, really, at the end of the match by Chelsea. And I will call it a collapse because, this might have been something that I feel like we would have seen out of last year's Chelsea team, where this year there weren't many matches where they fell apart, for lack of a better term. But in the 82nd minute, we saw that equalizer from Fulham, and it was, in my opinion, just a run of a kind of poor defensive play, poor defensive positioning, especially by Enzo and Colwill. So I wasn't exactly sure what was going through their minds there, or what they were doing. But yeah, we saw the final goal, the winning goal for Fulham, come at the absolute death, a complete heartbreaking moment for Chelsea, as in the 95th minute, I believe. And they really just looked like they were lost. I don't want to say they were certainly lacking desire or effort, but that's what it looked like to me on the whole defense. It started by a panic move from Sanchez, and he just booted it away. And then the entire defense just gave up and let an easy goal happen at the death, which you can't do. You definitely can't do. So that was a real bummer of a match. I thought, it's hard to give out match awards for both of these Chelsea matches, because it was honestly not great performances from most of the squad. I thought you could give the award to Palmer for that goal. I thought Colwill looked all right for most of the match, especially with the assist. But again, he had some lapses there too, just like much of the defense did. And I actually would have given Sanchez an award because he made a bunch of great saves in this one that really kept Chelsea in the match. But I can't give him an award because of his panic moment at the end of the match there. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Sanchez is definitely a scapegoat for a lot of Chelsea fans, it seems like. But in my opinion, their whole defense needs to kind of figure things out. They're certainly missing Fofana and they're missing Reece James, of course, but I think the midfield is probably missing Lavia too. It just doesn't look good for Chelsea right now. I don't think it's the end of the world. And this is kind of an overall analysis on the Ipswich match too, which I'll talk about in a second here. But I don't think it's the end of the world. Every team goes through these ruts at times, except for Liverpool. Right now, it seems like certainly every team in the Premier League is going through ruts, and you've seen it around the world. Bayern has been going through ruts. You notice it with Real Madrid and Barcelona and La Liga as well. So it happens, but I think it's really about how they respond to it now. I think this is where Chelsea kind of, you have to figure things out if you're Chelsea, if you're Enzo Maresca, because Maresca started off so strong. He was always pushing all the right buttons, and these last two matches he hasn't been at all. So, Chelsea moves on from here, and they really got to start to figure things out. Enzo Maresca, he put together a lineup for the Ipswich Town match that didn't do the job, quite frankly. He flipped the keeper position. He put Jorgensen in, and then he also moved Disasi into the right back spot. He put João Felix in at the wing, Madueke in at the wing, so no Neto and Sancho to start. And he also put Nkunku up at the 9 instead of Jackson, where I don't think Nkunku works best. I'm sure Jim will talk about this more because I think he agrees with me, but yeah, like I said, Maresca just did not push the right buttons for this one. In the Fulham match, he waited a long time to bring subs in, and he brought subs in earlier in this Ipswich Town match, but none of it seemed to work. So it's partially on the players, partially on the coach. For sure, you can't put all the blame in one corner there because for these two matches, nothing really was working right for Chelsea. So, the 12th minute in the Ipswich Town match, Jorgensen caused a penalty, and Chelsea was down 1-0 very quickly. Again, I talked about it before. Sanchez hasn't been great, but the thing is, I don't think Jorgensen's any better, so I think a lot of fans are kind of kidding themselves if they think all their problems will go away with Sanchez being benched, and I think this match was an example of that. I think Chelsea's defense as a whole just needs to be stronger, and they certainly do need a new keeper because I don't think Sanchez or Jorgensen is necessarily a long-term answer at this point. So that penalty happens, it's called. I think it was a poor call, I'll put that out there. I certainly wouldn't have called that penalty. It was a flop by Ipswich Town, but Jorgensen needs to also be a little bit smarter, if that makes sense. So that's the opening goal, and then Felix on Chelsea. João Felix actually had a goal that got disallowed because he was just offside in the 27th minute, and so there was a stretch of time at the end of the first half where Chelsea looked good, and I actually think they got a little unlucky. Palmer shot it off the woodwork. There were a few more chances that could have been goals, but Ipswich Town's keeper had an incredible match. I might have given him the man of the match award overall. I thought he was just incredible. So he kind of, snuffed out all those chances that Chelsea had there, and they didn't score before halftime, and then just looked pretty poor throughout the second half. Like I said, Ipswich Town's second goal came in the 53rd minute, and none of the changes that Enzo made subsequently really did anything. So, yeah, we'll see what Jim has to say about this one. I don't think I can give really any match awards for this one. I think Palmer, like I said, did all right. He made some chances, but nothing hit the back of the net. So Chelsea moves on now, and they play Palace on, I want to say, the 4th. It's this coming Saturday here. So we'll see if they can bounce back. I think that they will. I don't think this Chelsea team is just going to roll over and die and let their season be over, because they're still very much in the hunt for a European spot, and the Premier League is so wild this year. I don't want to say they're in a title race. Of course, that's the thing. No Chelsea fan says they're in a title race, but they're certainly in the hunt for Europe because the Premier League has been so bad this year. So again, we'll see what happens, and we'll see what Jim's got to say about this one.
I'm trying really hard to tell myself that Chelsea are in a rough patch, and I believe that to be true. Enzo Maresca is a brilliant manager. I trust his instincts. I trust his tactics. I trust his ability. And most of all, I trust the team to be able to figure it out together to become the high-flying team that I know they can be, and that they have been for a large portion of the year and the season so far. When you have a player like Cole Palmer, a player like Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, these guys can take you to the top and keep you at the top. Do I think Chelsea are going to win the title? Certainly not. But I never expected that. And I think that's what's getting me through this rough patch of a few games, is that I predicted top 4 for Chelsea. I predicted that they would come in 4th. They'd finish in 4th in the Premier League. And that's what they are right now. They've been one of the youngest teams in the history of the Premier League. So for any of these fans or analysts or really anybody to expect them to just stay number 2 and compete against Liverpool for the title, that was probably never realistic. So that's where I'm at right now. Am I a little worried that they could keep falling slightly? Sure. That thought has crossed my mind, and I've seen some worrying signs that they could go down that path. But ultimately, I understand what the owners and sporting directors have been building. I love the process that they're going through with the young talent that they've been able to find, and I think they will figure it out together to be better. Draw against Everton, a loss against Fulham when you're up 1-0. Yeah, those weren't great games. They really weren't. A beating at Portman Road in Ipswich, their first Premier League win since 2002. Yeah, not the greatest look. Potentially the worst loss in the Premier League this season, all things considered. But I just think this Chelsea team has what it takes to bounce back better than ever. Did we end the year 2024 on a great note? No, not really. But I think Chelsea will be okay. I really think they will be okay. And I just can't wait to see what this team can do in this new year, 2025. You know, a lot of things I saw in this Ipswich game weren't phenomenal. But you're playing guys out of position, Axel Disasi. The defense just isn't strong, and we've known that for a while. So if they can just get healthy, guys like Lavia, Reece James, Fofana eventually, even Abadiashile, who was maybe Maresca's number 3 center back before he got injured. So these things will take time. There will be bumps in the road. It's going to be a roller coaster. But once again, I will say I trust Enzo Maresca. And this team will not play like the way they did against Ipswich for the rest of the season. They just won't. There's no way you're going to stop Cole Palmer from being world-class. No way you're going to stop Moises Caicedo from being one of the best CDMs in the world. There's no way you're going to stop Nico Jackson from high-flying, scoring goals. There's so much potential with this team. And I'm excited to see, once again, what they're going to do. To analyze this game a little bit against Ipswich, they just never really had a foothold on the game. Did they look phenomenal at times, controlling possession and getting some chances? Yes, they did. They didn't take all their chances. They got super unlucky at times, Palmer hitting the woodwork twice. I think games like that just occur. It's going to happen. And if you're a team competing for a title, those games might not happen. And I think that's just more evidence to show that Chelsea are not ready to be at that level yet. And that's okay. But we have to keep our foot on the gas and keep going. Because top 4 is not guaranteed. It's not close to guaranteed. Even if there's a 5th Champions League spot, it's not going to be guaranteed. Teams are nipping at the heels of Chelsea, always wanting to be us. And we have to be ready for that. So I think this game, you get unlucky at the start. This penalty that was a complete dive from Liam Delap, a player who I respect, but he has to know that was a complete dive. Terrible refereeing, and VAR clearly shouldn't exist if they're not able to overturn a call that was so clearly to anybody's eye, if they have working eyes, that it was not a pen. But nonetheless, if you're Chelsea, you have to be able to overcome a bad refereeing call and get back in the game. And while they showed those flashes, they end up allowing a brutal second goal. Axel Disasi gives it to Ipswich, and they score. And of course it had to be Amari Hutchinson, a former Chelsea player. And that even told me more. It wasn't going to be Chelsea's day. I think sometimes you have to understand it's not going to be your day. And while a better team, a more intense, focused, together team might be able to say, okay, we're down 2-0, but we're going to come back and draw or even win, Chelsea's just missing that last piece. I don't want to panic too much because this is 3 games here, and we'll see what happens this weekend against Crystal Palace. I do think it's a must-win, but Chelsea are right there. They have the talent, they have the ability, the tactical awareness that Maresca has given them. Maybe he makes a few tweaks. Maybe he goes with his usual traditional lineup. I'm interested to see what he will do because I think he's a man that has shown he has the ability to do a lot of great things with this team. Coming in, we thought he would be this stubborn manager that isn't ready to give up on his tactics and the style that he wants to play, dominating possession, but maybe not always creating chances. He's shown that that's not necessarily his style. He's adapted with little things, whether it's inverting on the left side, the right side, putting Palmer in the left 10, the right 10, bringing him back more, pushing him up further, pushing Enzo up further, or having him come back deeper. Whether it's any of these tweaks he's been making, I think he's shown us that he has the right to earn our trust, have our trust, and have it for the rest of the season. Now, if they go and lose 8 in a row, like a Man City have done, yeah, we're obviously not going to trust him, and I'd expect him to get sacked at that point. But this is a team that has the ability to bounce back right here and right now in the year 2025 and be the best version of itself. I realize this is starting to sound like a motivational speech, self-help, get yourself to be the best that you can be. But that's the great thing about the Premier League, and that's the great thing about Chelsea Football Club. And that's why London will always be blue. Because this team right now has momentum behind it still. They do. Yeah, they've lost 3, 2 and 1 draw. But guess what? They have all the players and the pieces they need. They just need to find it once again. Are they getting a little tired at the end of December? Maybe. Is that an excuse? No, it's not an excuse. And it's something they need to overcome. But I think once they find it again, you'll see that they will go on a run that will be special. These next few games, if they can find it again, are all very winnable. Crystal Palace, FA Cup, Wolves sprinkled in there, I know. Even a City match sprinkled in there. Bournemouth, I believe. And somebody else I can't think of at the moment. But these are winnable games. And they're games that you build that momentum. You see if you can sustain it. You throw away the tape of these bad games. You hear that in American football a lot. When you get clobbered, you're just going to throw the tape away. I'm sure Maresca's sitting in his office rewatching the Ipswich tape, but if I'm a player, I'm forgetting that completely. If I'm Disasi, fuck that pass. Forget it completely. Just be the best that you can be for this team and strive to be the best team. Strive to catch Arsenal and Forest ahead of you. Strive to catch Liverpool, even though it probably won't be able to be done. I just think it's kind of that turning point of the season, and it happens to be perfectly halfway, where we need to realize what Chelsea is, what they have been, and what they can be. My first 2 years of being a fan, the last 2 seasons, it's been brutal. Chelsea have been a terrible team. Even at the end of last year, when they gained momentum, they still had signs that they weren't going to sustain that. And now I think as they've built this momentum, a lot of people started to think, okay, maybe Chelsea can be world beaters. And we maybe had to pump the brakes a little bit. But I still believe in Chelsea, in what they are and what they are building. And I know they're going to be a force for years to come. So I'm very excited to see how they play against Palace. And I do want to note as well, I'm very excited to see what happens in this January transfer window. I don't think they're going to make any crazy moves by any means, but there's some important things that do need to happen. If Lavia stays injured, I do think you need to bring Santos back or Leslie Ugochukwu. I'd prefer Santos, but I understand if they want to just keep him developing as a leader over there in Strasbourg, but you need to have that backup spot, somebody that can be ready to go. That's part of the reason they've been struggling, in my opinion, is Lavia has not been there. Anselmino coming back, I think he's probably still hurt, not quite ready to step in as a center back in the Premier League, but that's exciting news too. Having these young guys around the team in Cobham can only help the team grow and learn together. And we'll see what happens. Are there a few sales? A Chukwuemeka, a Chilwell? Sounds like Disasi probably will not get sold. Do you bring somebody in? I don't know. It's tough. If you do, it's because Fofana is hurt for a long time, similar with Badiashile. And then maybe you bring in a right-sided center back to pair with Colwill if you don't trust Tosin as much. And even if you do trust Tosin, you still would need depth at that point with those few injuries. Do you fix something at right back? I don't know. That depends on Reece James. I don't think Gusto's been as strong as he can be, but you still got the coverage there. Left back, Cucurella, Vega. I love Cucurella, but he needs to be consistent. The midfield I mentioned, I feel so good about Enzo and Caicedo, but you need Lavia or somebody else to fill that third spot. And then up top, is everybody happy? How are they feeling? In Nkunku, I just don't know if he fits. Is he going to be sold? Might be too soon, but we'll see what happens there. Felix, I still think there's all the potential in the world. I know he's a great footballer. Technically, not many are better than him. I just think it takes a little time. It's only been 5-6 months with this team being together. You cannot expect guys to just fire on all cylinders. Yeah, the dominating teams dominate, but it doesn't all come together in an instant. Liverpool, Man City, they didn't just suddenly become great overnight. That's not how it works. So we'll see with the attackers what happens. I'd love to see Guiu get some minutes if Nkunku's not doing well enough. I trust Palmer's going to pop off in the second half. And then Neto, Noni, Sancho, Felix, they just have to figure it out. They got to figure out, do I want to be consistent? Do I want to start every time in Maresca's best 11? And if they do want that, the cream rises to the top. The best, stay the best, become the best, and it'll all work itself out. That's the beauty of competition, the beauty of this team, and the beauty of the sport of football. That was a lot of therapy for myself in this pod, so I thank you for listening, but we'll see what happens on Saturday. Up the Chelsea, and let's get a frickin' victory over Crystal Palace.
Okay, so now I just wanted to hop back in and talk about Bayern Munich this winter because things have been surprisingly quiet. They have a lot of contract situations that they want to get done over this winter pause. Again, they don't want to let these things drag on. So I don't know if it's good or bad necessarily that it's been quiet. I think in the coming weeks and maybe even days, we're going to see a lot of movement here. From the standpoint of contracts and Bayern Munich, I think once January hits, that would be my expectation. So it seems like Bayern doesn't want to make any new signings in this winter window. I wouldn't expect there to be any big name signings, at least. We'll see what happens. The club is reporting that they don't want to make any signings, so there might not be a single one. I think what they need to do is just focus on these contracts, like I said. The biggest one is Jamal Musiala, and right now I'm optimistic that something will get done with him. I'm about, I would say, 90 to 95% sure that they'll get this deal done because all reports so far have been positive. I think I'll go through and kind of tell you what the most recent reports have been on all these big contracts as we make some discussion about it, I guess. But like I said, I'm pretty positive about Musiala. You can't take all these reports as Bible. You could pretty much, in the footballing world, you could pretty much look up reports for either side of anything. This guy's got a deal done. There's no way this guy's out the door. Look it up and you'll probably be able to find something. So that being said, I'm pretty confident about Musiala. It sounds like they're just working out the finer details of his contract in terms of salary number. I think that Bayern will be willing to meet his demands, especially those kind of intangible demands about being the face of the franchise and being able to play the 10. I think that Bayern will be willing to meet all those demands, and I think they should. To be honest, Musiala is a generational talent, so you just have to with him. And yeah, there's no reason to not pay him what he wants, honestly, because some other club out there will. That's for sure. Next up, I do want to talk about Joshua Kimmich a little bit. I'm about 85 to 90% sure that he'll get a deal done here with Bayern Munich. A little bit less than Musiala. He is in Kimmich seems to be, I guess, really taking these executives for a ride, and I think he probably deserves to do so. He bet on himself, after last year it sounded like they were going to ask him to take a pay cut, and then there's no way they'll be able to do that with the way he's been playing this year. He's truly been one of the most important players of the team. He's going to want to be a captain after Neuer retires, and I think Bayern is going to be willing to do that, make him one of the faces of the club, and there's a good chance they'll have to pay him even more based off how well he's been playing. So we'll see what happens with Kimmich. I think, in the past, he certainly hasn't felt respected or backed up by the club, and probably for good reason. Tuchel, aired him out in public, embarrassed him in public with the media, used the media as a weapon, and the club did not back him up at all. Like I would say they probably should have during those times. Things go all the way back to the COVID situation with Kimmich and him not feeling respected or wanted by the club. So I think at this point he might take a little bit longer to make his decision. He might look around out there. I know Pep wants him at City. I know Flick wants him at Barcelona. So he might look around a little bit, entertain some talks. But I think at the end of the day, he's kind of sticking it to the Bayern executives. And just with how well he's played this year, he really put them in a horrible spot, which I think he probably deserves to. So I think at the end of the day, he'll sign a new deal with Bayern and become that future captain. But I think, like I said, there's a chance he'll entertain some other talks. Next up, Alphonso Davies. this is a crazy case, Alphonso Davies. Right now, I'd put it at about a 40% chance that he signs a new deal with Bayern. You would have asked me this last year, I would have said a 0% chance. I was somebody who believed all the reports out there that he already signed a new deal with Real Madrid last year. I shouldn't say a new deal, but he already signed a deal with Real Madrid, for this summer, and things are inked up, and there's no shot that he will come back to Bayern Munich next year. But I think Kompany has gotten the best out of him. I think he has a good relationship with Kompany, and for all those public squabbles that Davies' agent has had with Bayern Munich, it seems like their relationship now is a little bit better. So I think there is a chance that Davies does sign a new contract. I think Bayern will be willing to pay him more than they were planning on paying him as well, because of how well he's played this year, and I think he's earned it. So I'm hoping that Davies signs a new deal with Bayern, even though he's out right now partying with Jude Bellingham, being recruited again to Real Madrid in those clubs. I think in Dubai those pictures surfaced from. So we'll see what happens with Davies. I'm up in the air as to if he's going to sign a new deal, but I definitely want him to. Next up, Leroy Sané. I think there's about a 50% chance that he signs a new deal with Bayern, and his situation is almost the opposite of Kimmich. I think Bayern has all the power in this situation, whereas Kimmich has all the power in his situation, because Sané has not looked, he's not looked up to what we've seen from him. He's not playing up to his potential, I should say. That being said, I think that if Bayern doesn't sign any new wingers, I think that you're going to need Sané. And I think that if he plays well in the second half of the year, they will eventually get a new deal done with him. But I think if he doesn't, they might let him walk. Right now, reports are that Bayern bosses are not convinced with his performances, and they're going to want to let him walk. Like I said, I'm worried about the injuries at the winger position. I don't think Coman and Gnabry will be healthy for any sort of significant stretch of time, so I think you might need Sané. Last summer we heard all this talk about Bayern wanting to do a squad overhaul, and lo and behold, they didn't sell anybody, and they only were able to sign one winger. So I think that they're going to probably need Sané, and it sounds like he wants to stay in Munich. He's, not... he's being a good sport about not starting every match, and he clearly loves the club right now. He's happy in Munich. His family is here, and he's willing to take a salary deduction, if you believe the reports. I don't know what type of player with as much talent as him would really be willing to do all that. So again, I think if you can reduce his salary a little bit, I think you keep him around, not necessarily to be a starter all the time. I think Bayern needs to refresh that winger position, but hey, that's just what I would do. It sounds like Neuer's going to extend as well for one more year. I think he's the best option Bayern has at goalkeeper, even though he certainly hasn't had his best season. I'm a proponent of him sticking around for another year. Nobody plays like Neuer, and he's so important to this team. I would like to probably sign a new keeper and have this new keeper, a young new keeper, I should say, learn under Neuer for a little bit. I think that would be the ultimate way to do this transition, because I don't think Peretz and I don't think Nubel either is ready for this next step quite yet. So I'll take that year extension from Neuer if it does happen. It sounds like all that needs to happen is Neuer's signature, and it sounds like it's just formalities at this point. It sounds like it's going to happen. With Muller, things are totally up in the air. If he will, have another 1-year deal, if he'll retire, if he'll look to go somewhere else where he can play a little bit more, who knows? I don't really have much to say about Muller right now, because I think it's just all going to depend on how the second half of the season shapes up for him. So I think that's where I want to leave this episode with my Bayern Munich breakdown of these contracts. But keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes looking at that YouTube channel. Subscribe, of course, while you're there. Keep your eyes peeled on the Twitter and all the podcasting platforms, because we'll do some more episodes over this winter break, and if any news happens, I'll be sure to update you. So thanks for tuning in. Mia san Mia.